there aren't any magic advices.
Important point number one.
Be ambitious.
Theory is grossly underfunded.
Focus on a few proposals.
Team up.
Team up with someone else.
Grants or awards for young researchers.
We give grants.
You have to say, put yourself in the shoes of the receiver. If you can sort of be inside the head of whoever is supposed to read this, then you're already, ahead. And the thing here is that you have to realize the first people who will read your application, who are they? Are they going to be computer scientists? Are they going to be from all kinds of other sciences, which sometimes they are? Will there then, depending on the process, be actual cryptographers, let's say in our field, that will review this and so on. And this makes a world of difference for what you can write and what you cannot write. So that's important point number one. What's your target audience here? And of course, obviously, if it's just general sciences, then you have to be much more general on a much higher level. You have to motivate things differently. Why is this important? Why your subject is important might be completely obvious to the cryptography, somewhat obvious to the computer scientist, and totally non-obvious to the general scientist. And so therefore, it's very different what you have to explain. But then, of course, in general, of course, you really have to be bold usually. Why is the world a better place if I get this grant? You have to really, believe in yourself there. So then, of course, the general structure, I think, is always pretty similar in the sense that you always start on a very high level and you work your way down to the details, and the error that people always make, particularly young people, I must say, is just doing too many details in the beginning. And it's very hard to avoid this, of course, sometimes, because first of all, you're so intimate with the details, you think everybody knows this. That's one thing. And the other thing is you're very passionate about, hopefully, what you do. So you really want to explain this. And then you want to give all the details, but usually you should not. So being able to be short enough and clear enough is one of the most important things here. So I guess that's the two main points. Know your target audience, and stay away from the details as long as you can.
Yeah. So I think for the first approach, so to speak, or the first time you approach this, it's probably a good idea to team up with someone else, maybe someone who already got their own grants, who has already some experience, who knows what reviewers want to read in grant proposals. In grant proposals, you don't want to, you don't write them in the same way you would write a paper, right? It needs to be more focused on you as a PI or whatnot, and probably the best way to do this is to team up with someone who already has some experience in writing grant proposals, so to get basically your hands dirty for the first time before you start trying to lift them yourself. For me here, this was actually someone from a slightly different field, and we do have some interdisciplinary grant there. So it's really hard to say. I think there it really depends on the constellation, right? Maybe. And on the project idea, right? First, you really need to know what you want to do. The premise probably shouldn't be, we need a grant. No, first, sort of what problem do we want to solve, or in which problem do we want to make progress, and approach it from this angle and see how the qualifications and abilities of each PIs come into play there.
Right. So I think that a lot of times people get in this sort of craze of writing a lot of grant proposals. I think a good strategy is to And that can end up being a lot of time drain because that's a lot of effort in writing these proposals and submitting it. It's useful to focus on a few proposals that are really well written and you expect them to get funded. Obviously, if they don't get funded, you can sort of maybe retry submitting again with feedback and so on. Crypto in general, when I started at Berkeley, there was a very, thanks to DARPA, there was this amazing Safe Fair program. And that was really a good fit for my research. So I was very lucky to get that. And it's not always that the starting faculty gets sort of such opportunities. One other thing that I think is very good, which I advise younger folks, is to try to find collaborators who are also young, maybe other starting faculty, and work together on these grant proposals. Because writing we're all used to working on papers with collaborators and working with someone. It's exciting, but when you're working on a grant proposal all by yourself, it can be very isolating because you're working on it yourself, and if it gets rejected, it feels like it's all on me, and so it's sort of useful to sort of collaborate with someone in writing these grant proposals. And it's good to do it with someone young because you're again in a similar situation. And if there is a good research match, I would expect that the funding agencies will also find that exciting because there are junior people are taking the initiative to collaborate, build out their research agenda, and I think that will be seen as quite positively as well. So if you do decide to go that path, that I think could be for a first few grant proposals, it could be a very good strategy to work with other people, write these proposals. Your work is reduced, it doesn't feel as isolating, and furthermore, it lays the foundation for other collaborations that research collaborations, which could be very useful.
So for grants and papers, I mean, in terms of writing, there aren't any magic advices. It's a really hard work. So one thing I can say about grants is that you should probably choose the topic of the grant to be something that people would be very excited about. I can give an example. At my early stage, I wrote a grant about adaptive security. And it was really a good grant with good questions, but people weren't excited about that. So I couldn't get this in just because people say, I mean, who cares about this type of questions? Today, things are slightly different, for instance, with respect to adaptive security, but that was, let's say, 8 years ago. So choosing the topic is a very important first step. Don't take that for granted. Choose something that people really, really appreciate and care about.
Yes, so the main challenge with research funding is you want at the same time to be ambitious. You want to to solve some important problem. Otherwise, the problem won't be interesting enough to attract funding. But at the same time, it should be something that you feel that you'll be able to do, or you'll be able to make progress toward it. And so being ambitious is probably a good thing to do. So you need to have the courage to think forward, think about, have a vision of how things may go and how to make progress in that direction over the next few years, and then also start doing some research to it's hard to attract funding in an area if you have not already done a substantial amount of work in it, of course. So sometime it is useful to think about this in advance and start working in a certain research direction. Also to explore if it is indeed worth pursuing that research direction, if you expect it to be fruitful or not, and so that you can target those problems. Your proposal should be credible. I mean, they want to fund, so research agencies, they want to fund good research from people that can do it, and for the right. So you wanted to. So the preliminary results are not necessarily on the specific problem, but it should be sufficiently close that can be seen as credentials for you to work on those problems. You want to show that you are the right, that's the right problem to work on, and that you are the right person to work on it.
I don't have to write grants myself because in our group we give grants to faculties. That said, I read a lot of grants and try to decide the best ones. One quick advice that I can give is that the more creative and the more understandable your proposal is, the more support you will receive from the reviewers.
Yeah, so I've been working in academia in Israel and in the US. When I was in Israel, it was very easy. There were very few grants I could get, and I got them. In the US, I mean, this is my 5th year, and so this was very strange. Although I'm a very senior faculty, the grants is not something I learned over time, and therefore it was very challenging for me. But by now I figured it a little bit. I feel that our field, that theory is grossly underfunded, and that's a call for all the senior people to work harder on getting it funded. But one thing I would say is that not having too much money, too much research money, helps with one of the other things you asked, which is time management, because it gives you a reason to say no. Right? Like I can say, I mean, where I am and in many other places, you seek wonderful students every year and you want to advise all of them. So having some bound on your financial capabilities is a good thing. You know you cannot advise more than X students. It's good. It can be good. So I think for me it was the time that I found it very hard to get grants was a time where I learned how to limit my expectations, and I think I have a better kind of expectations at this point.
Team up. I mean, there are things that you can do as a young researcher. There is career awards and things like that. So, but that's sort of, you know, you either get it or not. You apply. So A, apply, but B, these kind of things, either you get it or you don't. Beyond that, team up with others.
How, as a young person, do you manage to team up with the people who are more likely to get the grants?
Ask for them to team up with you.
The more senior people usually will be happy to have young people asking them to or joining them in grants. I don't think that is a problem in general. And really, there are all these grants or awards for young researchers.
Do you have any advice regarding grants, whether to get a big grant or a small grant, or of course you get what you get, but what should be your strategy of how to apply for grants, for what kind of grants to go after?
I assume that a multi-year one, a longer term one, is better because then you have more time in which you don't have to apply yet to another grant.